Hello and welcome to Alternating Creative Intellectuality. I'm Charlie Keeble. It's been a long time since I made one of these videos for YouTube. A lot of crazy things have been happening in the last 6 or 7 months since I last made this video, but things have been happening right now which are even more crazier. There is a convoy of truckers over in Canada who are protesting against the vaccine mandates, and they have become a central symbol of resistance against the medical tyranny, against the government who are pushing to make sure everyone gets a vaccine, but at the expense of their bodily autonomy. I've had my own vaccine jabs for the COVID-19 virus, but I'm fully in support of bodily autonomy, and I do not wish for people to be made to take certain substances that they disagree with, including health workers who at this time have had the mandates on them being made to take the vaccine or to keep their jobs being removed completely and cancelled. Thank God for that, and I'm very excited to see that. Right, now, Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, has the audacity and the absolute nerve to call the truckers resisting the vaccine mandates as people holding incorrect and improper views, and branding them fascist, racist and misogynists. When a leader can't take criticism from his own people, or tries to enforce them to do things against their will, that is just absolutely unforgivable, even for a leader of a free democratic nation like him. Now, as well as the trucker protest, I would also like to bring up the topic of this video, which is selective prejudice from progressive liberals, or regressive left, as some people like to call them, especially as I'm with the way they push their politics by saying, well, if you want to support diversity and equality, it has to be done according to how we do it. Well, when one side of the political spectrum controls the narrative on a subject like diversity or equality, then they dominate and manipulate the way in which the civil liberties and rights of those minorities and groups of individuals. I'm a big critic of the way that the way in which the left manipulates and controls diversity laws and equality missions in this country and across the rest of the Western free world, especially in regards to my autism advocacy, where I make sure that I'm allowed to choose my politics according to how I want them to be and not how the left wants it to be. I'm an autistic conservative, proud and passionate for the self-determination and civil rights of autism. I've been working on my new book, which is still in development hell, and I'm in no rush to complete it because I want it to be perfect and make all the right arguments for embracing liberal values, for the ways in which autistic people can be free to achieve their own potential. Now, recently I attended a Holocaust Memorial Day service just last week. It was a really beautiful service, and I spoke to my friends about how, my Jewish friends, about how the disabled people were also affected by the Holocaust. And well, I wish for the memory of the autism community and other disabled people not to be forgotten, who was killed in the genocide of the Shoah. Now, some of these leftists like to make sure, often, well, the rabbi at the service, who's a really nice guy, he told me that he agrees with me that the Holocaust is not a Jewish genocide. It was affected by people of many different kinds. a couple of years ago I did a video commemorating the Holocaust for the disabled with a speech about how Hans Asperger had to dice the control of his Nazi masters who insisted that he seek out intellectually inferior people and have them destroyed. Now, today, a couple of days ago, Whoopi Goldberg also had the nerve to say tried to water down the Holocaust by saying that the Holocaust is not about race. According to her and many other progressive liberals, leftists like her, racism is only, racial prejudices only occur when it's white on black. Well, and to her, racism, the Holocaust was not about racism because to her it was not, it was a white on white thing, and hence it was not a racist act of genocide at all. Well, racism can occur in many different forms, and you should not use racism loosely because it means the way it's been overused, it's lost its meaning, and you should apply all different varieties of prejudices to a civil rights crusade to make sure everyone gets along with each other, and not make sure one race or person of colour or religion gets to dominate another. And that remark from Whoopi and Justin, likening their citizens and their followers who disagree with them to be, well, racist, misogynist or even fascist supporters, is absolutely unfair. I'm looking over here to my laptop with the data just to look over the some lines that I've written to remind me what to say. Now, racism today is not being caused by mostly by neo-Nazi thugs, but by militant Islamists who have turned the progressive liberals of the West into their useful idiots. And the way in which this has affected the peace and security of Jews in the West has led to them becoming bullied and systematically attacked in the streets. And the media does not pay much attention to this because they will not report on a race issue whereby the perpetrator is black, and that leads to an imbalance of peace and harmony between communities. Jews experience racism both from the left and the right. From the right, neo-Nazi thugs call them subhuman beings. The left, however, associates them with their anti-capitalists, with their with rich and powerful overlords, and takes sides with militant Islamists, saying that they are rich and powerful beings who are responsible for all the world's economic problems. Now, one thing about right-wing and anti-immigration groups is something that they say about how the West is being Islamised by countless refugees and the politic refugees infiltrating and overpopulating areas, turning them into ghettos in communities in Britain. Now, that ghettoisation. Now, the logic to their argument does have some strong, is correct in certain ways, but I'm not talking about the race issue to it. I'm talking about it's the politics of the Middle East that is influencing and corrupting the civil liberties and civil rights of people here in the West. It's not Islam itself that's the problem, it's their politics, which comes from these countries' theocratic order of how their countries work. Consider Iran. In Iran, the the way in which the social order of the country works in such a way that if you want certain freedoms and liberties, you have to be in agreement with the supreme leader of the country or the collective of that nation. If any disagreement with them leads to tribal warfare, whereby one person who has these politics is pitted against another and they have to fight to get their own share of things. And what this has led to is a society that has no civil liberties or freedom for its people, but just tribal allegiances. And you can only get certain freedoms provided you are high up in the social spectrum of that country. And these militant Islamists have corrupted and influenced the progressive Western left by making them useful idiots to their bidding. The left also encourages racism to Jews by associating them with their detestation of capitalism. And they even encourage the Palestinians from accepting peace offers. Any peace offer that the Islamists that the Palestinians, for example, have been given by Israel or any Western government, they just throw it in their face unless it puts them in an advantage whereby they can get one above the Israelis. In April 2020, a Palestinian group of people were communicating on Zoom with some Israelis who held the same views of normalisation between Jews and Arabs in the Middle East. Now, the Palestinian in charge of this exchange was a man called Rami Arman, and the conversation was eavesdropped on by a woman called Hind Cowdery, who tagged some Hamas officials into the chat. And upon hearing of this, they later arrested Rami and had him taken into custody, charged with treason for undermining the rule of Hamas in the Middle East, in Gaza. And that's pretty much the way of all citizens of the Palestinians under the rule of their officials and their leaders, especially like Hamas and Hezbollah. Well, Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Now, Hamas has ruled Gaza since Israel unilaterally left Gaza in 2005, and instead of developing this territory for the good of its citizens, they have turned Gaza into a terrorist base from which they have fired countless rockets into Israel. Now, the Cowdery, the woman who grassed up Arman in that Zoom conference, right? Get this. She's a Palestinian journalist who works for Amnesty International. Now, Amnesty International is a human rights organisation that started in Britain in the 1950s by a Jewish man called Peter Benenson with the intention of promoting justice and freedom for all humanity. How ironic is it that it's now hiring pro-Palestinian activists, especially one Palestinian in particular, who is undermining their cause by allowing a man to be tortured and held captive by a brutal dictatorship against his will for having the wrong politics. It's so ironic, isn't it? It's organisations like this that are corrupted and undermine British justice and equality for ordinary people. Now, how on earth did the left, the Western progressive left, become slaves to such stupidity? Well, this post that I found on Likud last year explains it. Where, now, in 1964, Yasser Arafat of the Palestinian Liberation Organisation met with Viet Cong leader Ho Chi Minh, and he sat down with him and learned from his chief strategist, General Giap, who told him that in order to make his quest to destroy the Jewish state and the Jews of the world, he needed to conceal his real goals and give the appearance of moderation. Listen to this. I quote, "Stop talking about annihilating Israel and start talking about your struggle for human rights. Then you will have the American people eating out of your hand." Now, Arafat took this advice from Mohammed Yazid, the Algerian information minister, who told him that he needed to wipe out the argument Israel is a small state whose existence is threatened by Arab states, to turn the Palestinian struggle as a struggle for liberation, turn the Jews from victims into the aggressors and present the Palestinians as the victims who had their country stolen. And it is that tactic that has created this false narrative that the Palestinians are being oppressed by the Israelis to destroy Israel. And this is still being pushed on today, 57 years on, with countless useful idiots playing dead on campus, chanting "Free Palestine." How pathetic they are. And that is pretty much how many Western leftists present their own social justice campaigns for other things. Publicly, they say, "We are being oppressed by these overlords. They are rich and powerful, greedy men and we want justice." But privately, they rub their hands with glee and saying, "Look at all these useful fools. They'll buy into it, and one day we will have the upper hand and destroy those who we resist." And in doing so, they've even poisoned and undermined certain people, and they've even infiltrated Western nations to fight back against any normalisation or peaceful cooperative ideas between the West and the Arab world. Now, today, as I record this video, the by-election for the Southend West constituency is taking place, where Conservative candidate Anna Firth is hoping to win the seat to carry on the work of the late Sir David Amess, who was brutally murdered by an Islamist fanatic living in London, who went over there in November to a constituency service and stabbed him to death right in the middle of his work, carrying out his civic duties to the electorate and to the people of Britain, and especially to Southend West. Now, Sir David was seen as a threat by his attacker because of his promotion of liberal democracy and peaceful cooperation in the Middle East, especially where his foreign policies included was promoting peace campaigns to resist Iran's reign of terror from the Ayatollahs. He promoted liberal democracy and peaceful cooperation in the Middle East on foreign policies, some of which have thankfully been achieved today. He was a staunch supporter of Israel and the right of its existence. He kept good relations with Leonce's Muslim community and ensured that they had the best opportunities and civil liberties in Britain that brought them into harmony with other faiths and races. And in 2005, he helped to secure the release of Majid Nawaz from prison in Egypt after he de-radicalised himself in prison. Today, Majid Nawaz is a successful promoter of secular Islam, and he's also a radio host. Calling for the promotion of secular Islam, whereby Muslims today should embrace the civic rights and liberal ideas of Western societies and combine them with the Islamic nations of their own to promote civil rights and decency in their own countries, so that they can reform Islam for the modern world and not tie themselves to that medieval maniacal death cults that, like the way Iran, Iraq and Afghanistan run their own countries. And it is And this is what I think is, and so now what we have here is a situation whereby the civil liberties of countries like Britain being undermined by people who are, well, dressing up all their social justice campaigns as calls for civic justice, when in reality they want greater equity in civil rights so that they can trump the other to get more than they already have. That's not fair. As an autism advocate, I don't seek to control and undermine the civil liberties of other people. I do want self-determination for autistic people, but I do not want them to trump and conquer the civil rights of others. There should be fairness and equality for all, in a way that whereby everyone gets along with each other. But sadly, that struggle is still taking place today. So to my fellow autistics, I call upon you to do this. Be a righteous gentile and defend the rights of Jews in the West and the Middle East. The self-righteous, do not be self-righteous, be a righteous gentile. You need to embrace all classes of citizens, as we are neurodiverse as ourselves. We each have different patterns of thought as broad as the spectrum of our neurodiversity is, and so hence we should accept and embrace a diverse and varied spectrum of people, ideas, faiths and races in this world. Now, I will leave this to you to carry on yourself, and I will bring an end to this video. And for those of you who have only just discovered me today, subscribe and follow my channel on YouTube. There's also my Facebook and Facebook connection to this blog, and there's also the main blog, ackeyboard.co.uk, for which I would like you to follow. This is AC Keeble, hosted by Charlie Keeble, and I'll see you in the next video later on. Thank you very much for watching.